Hi, this lesson we'll be practicing problems from the sixth grade STAR test that are griddable. Now, griddable problems have to be filled in. So you have to solve numerically, you have to have an exact answer, and then you have to fill your answer in the griddable box. Now, all types of questions can be griddable questions. So as we go through today, you'll see that you'll have some FTP, you might have some just solving, you might have an equation, you might have a proportion, all types of questions are potentially going to be a griddable. And you only have a handful of griddables. Now, a lot of kids will skip the griddable because they are intimidated or that the griddable makes them nervous. Please don't do that because these are very solvable problems that tend to be very manageable numbers. And as we look at the griddable, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay. This year, you're going to be taking your STAR test online. Okay. Everyone's taking it online. So I know some of you may have taken it online in the past or maybe at a different school, but every single student in Waco ISD will be taking the test online this year. And that's awesome because there's really a lot of features you can do, and you can go online and look it up and practice, or you'll be able to practice at school. But reach out to your teacher to make sure that you know what to expect the day of the test. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the griddable box, and this looks different than the griddable that you used to have. The top part looks pretty much the same, but you used to have to fill in the numbers down below, or at least when you fill it out by hand, you do. You do not have to do that on the day of the test. So you will notice that you have a negative positive space right here. You only need to fill this out with a negative if your answer is negative. Okay, only if your answer is negative. So for instance, if my answer was -2, I would want to put the negative. So I would go in and find the negative key. And the negative key is right below or right next to your backspace. You have backspace, and then to the left, you have plus and equals, and then you have your minus key to the left of the plus key. So if it is a negative number, I would put it here. And let's say it was -2. Well, 2 is a whole number and it's in the ones place. So I would put it here. Okay. Notice I didn't fill in with zeros. It is not necessary to fill in with zeros. And in fact, I recommend that you don't fill in with zeros on the online test, only because you might make a keystroke error or something like that. And it's just not necessary. Okay. It's not necessary. So that's what it'll look like. You'll have a plus or minus. For this assignment, you're going to need to create text boxes inside to fill in your answers. But I'm sure by this point you are a pro at that because you've been doing so much online work through Canvas. I'm going to be using the UPS check method. Hopefully that's a method that you are familiar with. If you are not, you can just watch my examples. But basically, all we do is go through a 4-step process. We want to understand the problem. So before I can make a plan or solve, I have to understand what is the problem asking me. And especially today, because griddable questions can kind of run the scope of the whole year, I need to know what type of problem it is. Then once I know what the problem is asking me and I know what type of problem it is, then I can plan on my strategy. Am I going to use my bulldog box or a percent proportion? I know y'all call it an eagle box or a panther box. We call it all kinds of things. Is it FTP? Am I converting? Is there something on the formula chart that can help me? So when you're making that plan, you really have to know what resources can I have that will help me and how many steps will it take, those type of things. So you want to make a good plan. And then we're going to solve. So then we're going to work out our solution using the plan. And then we're going to check our answer. We're going to look back. First question you need to ask is, does your answer make sense? If it's an equation or a mathematical problem and you can plug your answer back into the original problem, do that to determine if you came up with the correct answer. If you didn't, or if it's a multiple choice and the answer you got is not one of the choices, then hey, I made a mistake. And so if you didn't get the right answer the first time around, that is totally okay. You have plenty of time to go back and try a different method. And so maybe you misunderstood the problem. you know, something similar, something like that. Or it might be something really simple, like you made a calculation mistake, you didn't regroup properly, or something along those lines. Okay, so you'll see me using that method in a very condensed short form, and then we will be gridding our answers in our new online griddable format. So let's get started. Um, I included the formula chart. It's in your activity as well. The setup of this looks just like the assignment that you are going to do. And there are a few questions where the reference chart is helpful to us when we're finding and solving for griddable answers. All right, so our first example problem says the expression shown can be used to calculate the amount of money in dollars a grocery store customer should receive in change when paying with $50. And they've given us our equation. What amount of change in dollars should the customer receive? So I know that I have this problem right here all in parentheses, and it's to the right of my minus sign. So I'm going to use my order of operations, and I want to find out what number is this total that I'm going to take away from 50, because my final answer is going to come from a problem that looks like this, but this number right here, I need to solve for using that. Okay, so understanding the problem. Well, it's multi-step, right? So I need to add to find my total that I spent at the store, right? So we're going to find our total, and we're going to use addition to do that. And then we are going to subtract that from 50. So then our second step would be subtract our total. And I'm going to kind of use shortened stuff, partly because I'm writing with a mouse, and then just because I'm talking and verbalizing my thinking. And so hopefully you can keep up with me. And then we're going to subtract. Okay, so what's my plan? Well, my plan is to use my order of ops. So I'm going to use order of ops. That's going to help me find that amount. Okay, so let's solve. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm looking left to right in a math problem. So I'm going to go across here, and I see multiplication right there. So that means I guess I'm going to come down here, 14 plus 12. And then 2 times 5 gives me 10. Then my next multiplication, moving right to left, is 2 times 2, which is 4. And then I'm going to add 3 to that. Now, when I look across, all of my numbers are positive. I'm going to add them all up to get my total. So this gives me 14 plus 12 gives me 26. 10 plus 4 plus 3 gives me 17. 7 plus 6 gives me 13. Gives me another 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 43 total. Okay, so that means my customer spent $43, but they paid with a $50 bill. So if I pay with a $50 bill, I want my money back. So that's our last step, which is our subtraction problem. So I'm going to do 50 minus 43. I'm going to need to regroup. So I'm going to take a 10 away from my 50. That's going to give me 10 minus 3, which is 7, and 4 minus 4, which is 0. So my final answer is 7. Okay. I probably, for today, probably won't go back in and check just because I want to get through the lesson and give you time to solve on your own. But this is a positive number, so I'm going to go in and grid it. 7 is a whole number. It's in the ones place, and I'm just going to put it right here. And that's the key that I would keystroke in and plug in for that answer. Now, notice I didn't put the plus sign because I don't need it. I only need to mark that if it's a negative. And I didn't fill in with zeros because I don't want to do that and inadvertently hit a wrong key or get a wrong answer that I should be getting right. So that would be just a mathematical problem or a given expression. Here is another example of an expression. This one says, a teacher wrote this expression on the board. What is the value of the expression? And so they want me to simplify this, right? So this is a simplify. When we simplify, we use our order of ops. I'm going to apologize in advance for my spelling and my writing. There we go. All right, so we're going to simplify. So we're going to use order of ops. I'm just going to go O of O. And it looks like I'm going to end up with 3 steps. I have multiplication, division, and then addition, right? So my plan is first step, I am going to multiply. Next step, I'm going to divide. And then my final step, I'm going to add. So sometimes I just make a little note like that for myself, just so I know first I'm going to multiply, second I'm going to divide, third I'm going to add. So when I take a negative 6, multiply, by 2, I get negative 12. And then I'm going to add that to negative 8 divided by 4, which gives me a negative 2. I'm adding 2 negatives, so my answer will stay negative. And 12 plus 2 is 14. Okay? Now, this answer is negative, so I would want to go into this first box, and I would like to put in my negative. 14 is a whole number. I have a 1 in the tens place and a 4 in the ones place. And that's how that answer would look gridded and keyed into an online STAR test. So those are some examples of some equations that have been on the test before. And let me say this, guys, you may have seen some of these test questions even on your practice test that you took earlier, because these are real STAR questions, okay? So with that being said, we want to make sure that that we are using all the examples and all the skills and really paying attention, because you might get lucky and see a question either just like it or very similar to it. All right, our next problem says the list shows the area in square feet of each apartment available for rent in a building. What is the range of these areas in square feet? Well, there's a lot going on here, but I know that the range can be found, right? So this is what we would call a statistics problem or a data problem, right? And when I solve for a range, I have to know what that vocabulary word means. And if we remember from our data unit, the range is the highest number value that we're given in our data set and the lowest value data set. And we subtract those two numbers because the range is the distance of our numbers, right? And so the range we have to take and the greatest number and subtract the smallest number. So I'm going to look and scan my numbers. I have 565, 961, 867, 517, 627, 714, 514, and 728. Now, first I want to find my largest number so that I can set up my problem. And when I look across here, 961 is my greatest number. Okay, so my plan is to subtract. It's a stat problem looking for range. So I'm going to subtract the big number and the small number. So we have found our biggest number, which is 961. So I'm going to put that on top. And then we are going to subtract our smallest value. And it looks like it's 500. And I have two of 517, but we're only going to use one of them because it's still the lowest value, even though there's two of them. And so we're going to subtract the 517. And so I cannot take 7 from 1, so I'm going to regroup using my 6, which gives me 50, gives me 11. 11 minus 7 is 4. 5 minus 1 is also 4. And 9 minus 5 is also 4. So 444. To check my work, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do the opposite operation. So what is the opposite operation of subtraction? You're right, addition. And so we're going to take our bottom two numbers. We're going to take the 517 and the 444, and we're going to add them. And if we have subtracted correctly, when we add these two numbers, they should equal our greatest number that we started with, which was 961. So 7 plus 4 is 11. Carry the 1. That gives me 1 plus 2 plus 4 is 6. 5 plus 4 is 9. And indeed, we did get 961. So we know our answer is correct. It's 444. Um, so I have a 4 in the ones place. I have a 4 in the tens place. And I have a 4 in the hundreds place. Now, you'll notice when I fill out my Griddable, I usually start at the ones place and move to the left. Okay. You don't have to do that, guys. However you fill in is fine. But notice I'm not filling in with zeros because they're just not necessary. And I don't need to put it that it's positive, that it's understood. If it's a positive answer, then you don't need to, you can leave it blank. Okay. Let's see what our next problem. So they've given us a chart. And it says that Aiden asked a group of students to choose their favorite type of music from the choices of rock, hip hop, country. The results of the survey are shown on the graph. So this is a bar graph where I have types of music and the number of students. I like to go in and kind of mark up my graph. So if I look here, there were 20 students here, and they all liked rock the best. Hip hop was 40. And country was 30. Now, based on the graph, how many students in a class of 360 students would be expected to choose hip hop or rock? Okay, well, let's understand, what is the problem asking us? It's asking us to make a prediction, right? Based on the graph, if 360 students were surveyed, how many would we expect to like either type of music? Well, we need to know how many people liked either type of music out of the people we asked. And it didn't tell us how many total people we asked. Okay. So this is a, kind of a data problem, again, kind of like the range, except we are using information from a graph to solve a math problem. When I look here, looks like I'm going to set up a proportion. So when I'm making a prediction, proportion, they sound the same. You're almost always going to have to create a proportion to make a prediction. Okay, so I'm going to use proportional reasoning, or what you might call your proportion box, your bulldog box, your eagle box. That's called all kinds of things. Okay, and basically we're going to put one fraction on this side and the other one here, and then we'll look at the relationship to find our missing value. Okay. So how many kids were surveyed? Well, 20 plus 40 is 60 plus 30. So out of 90. So I started with 90 students total. And remember, our total is always our denominator. And out of those, who liked hip hop or rock? Well, 20 liked rock, 40 liked hip hop. So 40 out of 90. And since I was given that entire fraction, I can reduce it. And I can see right off the bat that I am not going to mess with those zeros. And I'm just going to work with the fraction 4/9 because there's no need for those zeros. Because remember, these are all equivalent fractions. So if you have been in a math lab or seen your math teacher work out ratio tables, that's exactly what we're doing. And so if I have a given fraction, which means I have taken the numerator and the denominator, I know they go with each other, then I am free to reduce to make my numbers simpler, to make my math easier, and to make my work more efficient. Okay. Do I have to do it this way? Absolutely not. But if you can understand and think this way, you'll be more successful now and later, just like the candy. Okay, so we have, y'all probably even know what candy that is. So in a class of 360, so instead of having 9 students, what if I had 360 students? How many would I expect? Okay, well, let's look at something here. If I didn't look at this 0 and I just looked at 9 and 36, I know my multiplication tables and I know you do too. And so we know that 4 times 9 gives us 36. So likewise, 4 times 90 would also give me 36. Okay, so we have a multiplicative relationship of 4. We have multiplied the numerator by 4 to give us a new value of 360. And basically what we're saying, guys, is instead of talking to 90 people, we're going to interview 360 people. And based off what we asked the 90 people, we're going to predict what we think would happen with 360 people. And so now I'm going to multiply my numerator times 4. And 4 times 4 gives me 16. And I'm going to include a 0 on the end because I have 360, and 16 out of 360 makes 0 sense, but 160 does. Okay, and so our answer is 160. It's a positive answer. If I wanted to go back and check myself, there are lots of ways I could check. We could do our cross multiplication, right? You could do 40 times 360 and then 90 times 160 and make sure you get the same number. Okay, we're going to just key in our answer in our griddable. So again, it's 160. It's positive, so I don't need to fill in the positive. I'm going to start at my decimal. I'm going to fill in a 0 for my ones place, a 6 in the tens place, and a 1 in the hundreds place, because my final answer was 160 students. So notice, this is a griddable. It's got a lot of stuff going on. It's a proportion. But what did I really do, guys? I multiplied a number by 4, and then I multiplied another number by 4. So don't let these problems intimidate you. Make sure you read them, make sure you understand them, and then choose a strategy that you know works best. All right, let's look and see what this problem is asking. It says Carlos walked to school on a 14 of the 20 days of school in February. Let me read that again. Carlos walked to school on 14 of the 20 school days in February. Which value is equivalent to the fraction of school days in February that Carlos walked? So they've given this in a very easy way, 14 of the 20, right? So this is equivalency, or what we like to call in sixth grade math, FDP. It's what you started out the year doing. It's one of the more easier things that we do, but it is one of the things that we make some careless mistakes with. So let's be careful. They're asking me for the fraction, and they want to know what's equivalent. Guys, our choice is a decimal here. And so we're going to come up with the fraction, but we're also going to come up with the decimal and key in the decimal. You cannot key in a fraction answer. The only types of answers that you can key in are whole numbers and decimals. And notice, I will only have 2 places in my decimal value in 6th grade. So please pay attention to that. If you get some wonky, crazy number, please tell yourself, whoa, self, I did something wrong. Okay, so our plan is to write the fraction, reduce it, and then convert it, right? So we're going to write the fraction, and then we're going to convert. And when we write it, we are also going to make sure that when we write it in its simplest form. Okay, so I have a couple of steps for this problem as well. And I can't really think of a whole lot of questions on the test that you're going to knock out in one step. Okay, guys? So it's 14 of the 20. Is over of means 14 over 20. And they want us to give us the decimal. There are really a lot of different ways you can do this. You can convert it to a fraction over 100, and that gives you your decimal. You can do it over 10, which is what I'm going to do, and that also gives me my decimal. So I'm going to reduce this, divide it by 2, right? And that gives me the fraction, the equivalent fraction, 7 out of 10. Well, hopefully you understand that that means that I have 7 tenths, right? I have 7 tenths, which is 0.7. So It's positive, so I'm not going to fill in the positive. It is to the right of the decimal, so I'm going to put my 7 right here to the right of the decimal. Notice I didn't fill in with zeros. I know some of your teachers tell you to, and if you are comfortable and confident doing that, do that. But if not, it is unnecessary and will give you, and sometimes creates the opportunity to make a careless mistake. So please be mindful of that on the day of the test. So this would be an example of how we grid a decimal answer. Our next problem says a warehouse has a perimeter of 6,615 feet. What is the perimeter of the floor in yards? So understand the problem. I'm given something in feet and they want me to tell them what my answer would be in yards. So what kind of problem is this? Bingo, conversion. So we are going to convert. So this is a conversion problem. And how do we convert? Well, you solved conversion problems the same way that you did your percent proportion problem. So we are going to use proportions. But you're probably saying, wait, hold up. But I only have one number. How do I know what my other fraction will be if I've only been given one number? Because for a proportion, you need to have 3 values. So because it's a conversion and it's yards to feet, I'm going to go look at my formula chart. You should be given a hard copy of your formula chart the day of the test. If you are not, the formula chart is embedded into the test, okay? And that is the type of question that you can ask. So if you are struggling finding your formula chart and you need it to answer a question, please raise your hand. The adult in the room will come to your desk and you explain to them what you need, and they should say, sure, here it is. That is a question that they can answer for you. If they can't answer that for you, please advocate for yourself and say, will you go find someone that can help me find it? Do it nicely, but it's important because it's important that you do your best on that day. All right, so we are converting yards to feet. And if I look at my formula chart, they give it to me right there. Okay, 1 yard equals 3 feet. So let's go back to our question that we're working on. Okay, and so one of our given, so we have feet and we have yards. And what they have told us is that for every 3 feet, it equals 1 yard. They told me that I have 6,615 feet. And so basically we're going to cross multiply and divide. 1 times that doesn't change it, and then we're going to divide by 3. So it is basically just a one-step division problem, but we had to go gather our information from our formula chart. So I'm going to take 6,615 and 3 goes into 6 twice. It goes into 6 twice again. It does not go into 1, but it does go into 15 5 times. And so our answer is 2,205. Now, if I want to check this, we're just going to do the opposite operation. So we divided to get our answers. So we would multiply to check, and we would multiply 2,205 times 3. Just like so. And it does give you 6,615. But we need to key in this 2005. So we're going to put our 5 in the ones place, 0 in the tens place, 2 in the hundreds, and 2 in the thousands. So I hope you noticed something. I don't even have room to put a bigger number than a number in the thousands, okay? So if you are on a griddable question and you're getting like 35 million, you're wrong. Okay, because you can't grid 35 million. You can only grid a number in the thousands. All right. Well, let's keep going. All right. This problem says that the area of a rectangle is 45.5 square inches. The base of the rectangle is 7 inches. What is the height of the rectangle in inches? So this is understanding the problem. They are looking for the height. They have given me the area. And so this is a work backwards type of problem, okay? But I do need my formula for area. So you can go back to your formula chart, and we're looking for area. And it is area of a rectangle, which is right here, or a parallelogram. And my formula is the base times the height equals the area. Well, then the problem they gave me, so the area equals base times height. But I don't know what the height. I know the base is 7 though. Okay. So my plan is to work backwards. So this is my plan. I'm going to work backwards because they gave me my area. So they told me my area was 45.5. And they told me that equaled my base, which is 7, times my height. So basically what we're saying is 7 times some number gives us 45.5. So this is multiplication. If I'm working backwards, I'm going to divide. And so we're going to take 45.5 and divide it by 7. Okay, because if we work backwards, we use the opposite operation. Okay. Put my 7 here. Okay, so 7 goes into 4, doesn't do it. 7 goes into 45 6 times. 6 times 7 is 42. 5 minus 2 is 3. Fill in my decimal, bring down my 5. 7 goes into 35 5 times. And our answer is 6.5. To check it, I'm going to use the opposite of what I used to solve. So we're going to do 6.5 times 7. So 7 times 5 is 35. Carry the 3. 6 times 7 is 42. Plus 3 is 45. I have one decimal place. So I'm going to put that decimal place right there. And we sure enough got the same answer that we started with. So now my challenge is to grid the 6.5. So I'm going to start at my decimal. I have a 6 to the left because that's my whole number. Then I have a 5 in the tens place. My answer is positive, so I'm not going to mess with anything else, and I'm not going to fill in with zeros because it's not necessary. So you can see, guys, this is a one-step problem. I made it a two-step because I checked it, which I hope you're doing too. But again, not a difficult problem, but a lot of you will skip it just because it asks to be a griddable. Don't do that. Okay. In triangle XYZ, the measure of the angle YXZ is 50 degrees, and the measure of angle XYZ is 75 degrees. What is the measure of angle XZY in degrees? Well, this is understanding. What are they talking about? Well, they're talking about a triangle, and they're talking about degrees in a triangle. So this is a triangle problem. And it's talking about angle measures. And I know that all 3 angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. And this is one of those things that I just have to know the day of the test. There isn't a way to retrieve that information if you've forgotten. That's a poor attempt at a degree symbol there. Okay. They've given me 2 of them. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add my 2 given. So my first step in my plan is to add the 2 angles that they gave me. And then I'm going to subtract that total from 180 because I know all 3 angles in a triangle equal 180. So let's go back up into our problem. They told me that this YXZ is 50 and XYZ is 75. So I'm going to add 50 to 75. 0 plus 5 gives me 5, and 5 plus 7 gives me 12. So it's 125, but I'm not done because I'm looking for the missing measure. So now my next step was to take 180 and subtract 125. I cannot take 5 from 0, so I'm going to regroup and make that a 10. 10 minus 5 gives me 5. 7 minus 2 also gives me 5. And 1 minus 1 gives me 0. So my third angle measure should be 55. How could I check it? Well, we know that all three angles equal 180, so I'm going to just add them up. So I'm going to do 50 plus 55. And that gives me 105. And then now I'm going to do 105 plus 75. 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry the 1 is 8. And I got 180. Good job. Now, sometimes my kiddos do this check part and then they bubble in the wrong answer. Please don't do that. Remember, our answer was 55. And in fact, you might want to even bubble before you check it. And then if you need to go back, you can erase it because I don't want you to get confused on which number you want to use. All right. So our answer was 55. It was a whole number, a 5 in the tens and a 5 in the ones. We are to the left of the decimal. I think that was our last problem in the lesson. Yep, it was. So again, remember, grid carefully, understand your problem, use your solving methods, but do not skip the griddables because I promise you, you'll be successful. Good luck on your test and just get a good night's sleep and eat a good breakfast and just take your time and do your best.